Welcome to another episode of the Gay Barchive Show, where we explore gay history, one bar at a time. I'm your host, Art Smith, and today we'll be joined by the self-proclaimed king of DWORLD and all-around bon vivant, Daniel Nardicio. So welcome to the show, Daniel.
Hey, thanks for having me. I like that you're shrouded in mystery behind this little icon that says Gay Barchives.
Well, this project is all about the bars and the guests that are talking about them. It's not about me.
Right.
So I'm kind of excited to hear about a few of your bar experiences. I know you mentioned to me that your first gay bar experience was in New York at a place called Slide. And I did a double take when you said that, because when I started my research, I discovered a bar called Slide in Manhattan, in New York, Greenwich Village. And it was open from, I think, 1888 to 1892. And I said, surely he's not 150 years old. So
I look at lately after COVID, but I'm not. No, that was the original Slide. And we sort of recreated that sort of basement bar vibe. That Slide was really intense. Like, they would serve like bathtub gin, and if someone died, they had like something in the basement that they would slide them out into the East or the Hudson. So we weren't doing any of that. That was a whole different vibe for us. But yeah, my original party that I ever did was at the Slipper Room. I'm just going to go back for a second. It's sort of where I got my start. I decided to do this party that melded gay nightlife with burlesque. This was, 20 odd years ago. So it was like the neo-burlesque movement was really nascent at the time. There were just 5 or 6 people doing it. And I worked at this place called Pink Ink, where we did spandex decor for events. And I worked with all these characters named Dirty Martini and Scotty the Blue Bunny and Stephanie from the Biddle Stiff Circus and Julie Smith, all these like really cast of kooks. And I fell in love with them. And I was an out-of-work actor that had just had a job there. So I started going to see them perform at the Slipper Room, which was this burlesque house in the Lower East Side in Stanton and Orchard. And like, I fell in love with nightlife. I had never really had a drink before. I was like in my 30s, I guess. It was like 30, 31. And I just sort of took off and fell in love with it. So then my friends were opening the bar on the Bowery called The Slide, and they said, we really need help. And so I came on board, and that's sort of how it all started. And it was like this clusterfuck of burlesque and sex and kooky nightlife performers and, opera. And, it was a real sort of time,
So it was a real unique experience. It wasn't anything like what you see, in the gay bars these days.
I'm sure there are people that are doing somewhat similar stuff now. I have a feeling that like Brooklyn scene has a little bit of that. Like you're talking like, Come On Everybody or Elsewhere, or, Macy Rodman was doing this really cool party I went to at some restaurant called Pedro's. It was wacky as all get out. There's always my theory has always been this. In nightlife, there's go-go boys, drag queens, and DJs. And pretty much everyone just moves that around. No one's doing anything. No one's reinventing nightlife. No one's blowing ideas out of the water, because they're just those 3 things that people move around. It's how you do it. It's your point of view. And so my point of view was like very much like anything can happen, like wild, just sort of, I came out sort of post Giuliani. I mean, I'd been through the horrible Giuliani era, but, AIDS was sort of in the rearview mirror, and I was sort of really brazen sexually. And so that's kind of, it melded all together.
So this would have been what, in the late 90s?
I'm really bad with years, but I moved here I moved here from Berlin, and I lived in Berlin from the wall came down in 95, and I came here in, I guess, 90. No, wait, I don't remember. It was somewhere around that. I can't remember when the wall came down in 89, and I moved here I moved to Berlin until 95, and then I moved here. So it was 97, 98. Yeah.
Okay. So at that time, the infamous club kid scene in Manhattan was kind of winding down. We'd already had Michael Ehrlich go to jail, and this was kind of a new fringe of the nightlife scene in New York City.
There was, okay, there was Johnny and Chi-Chi doing Jackie 60, which is very sort of performance-based and very artistic and creative. And there was Mario Diaz that was doing like really brazen sexual things at the cock, and there was Dean Johnson doing flat out sexual stuff like crazy parties. And I think I sort of was like a melding of all of them in the sense that I had a creative edge like Johnny and Chi-Chi, who are like dear friends of mine now. So I kind of, I never gone to it, but I had the same sensibility. I never went to Jackie 60. I think I went once. Mario Diaz thing, which is very sexual, I was influenced by that. And then Dean Johnson's thing was really sexual. Like it was like mattresses on the floor, like no ambiance. And so I didn't lean towards that as much, but it really kind of like blew my mind. And so I think I was sort of a love child of those three. That sort of my sensibility came from that. And it was in me, but when I saw the possibilities, I took from a little of everything and created my own thing, which is all you really can do at the end of the day. I mean, like I said, there's only so many options, but my point of view was artistic, but openly sexual.
And what was the actual space like where Slide was? I know the original Slide was kind of a dark, dingy dump of a hustler bar that was, kind of grungy. What was the new Slide like?
That was it. The downstairs was really grungy, really wood, lots of wood, real dark. Upstairs was I forget the name, the Marquee, it was called upstairs. And that was a little tiny show palace, about the same size as Club Cumming is now. And so, we would do shows up there. I mean, it would be Pam Ann, it would be Lip Synca, it would be Jackie Beat. I mean, Sweetie and I did a party on Fridays called High Life, Low Life, which is sort of based on Luc Sante's book about the Bowery at that time called Low Life. And High Life was like drag, and every night was New Year's Eve, and downstairs it was just filth. And we would, Sweetie and I would do this thing downstairs called Low Life Erotic Theater, where like 1 or 2 in the morning, we would have written and we would read on the microphone this porn script, and the Go-Go Boys didn't know what the porn script was going to be. They just acted it out. So it was like improv and hilarious. And so one of them was Officer Smiggins Frisked Me, and it was like about a cop. And we had like Jeff Whitty, who wrote Avenue Q, who was dressed as a cop, and he was go-go danced for me for a long time. And they would act out the porn scripts, and it was pretty hot.
And how long did that adventure last?
High Life, Low Life was probably about 2 years, 3 years. I think the Slide all totaled was like 2 or 3 years. Eventually the police came because I started the underwear party, which, I know we're going to get to, but the underwear party I started at the basement in the Slide as with DJ Sammy Joe, and we were heading up and we were realizing we did this Thursday party called Tigerbeat. We realized that one of the Thursdays was going to be Christmas, and we were like, what are we going to do? And I think it was Sammy who said we should do an underwear party. Well, I did some research, and they hadn't been done since the days of the Anvil. They had like a Tuesday night jock strap party or something. And so we did it, and it was a huge hit. But the problem is that I had a hard time saying no. So they just kept turning into like orgies. I mean, orgies. And gay men had been so repressed for so long that they just went flat out bonkers. I mean, it was hard because it was like the AIDS crisis was sort of in the rearview mirror, and people were still serial converting, but it wasn't like people at this point knew to use condoms. But it kind of made me a pariah because people felt like I was like, the part of the problem, not the solution. And so like the press sort of, some of the press turned against me, and the press was for me. And there was like a lot of backlash because people felt like if I weren't throwing these parties, I guess they thought gay men would stay home and knit. And I was like, no, girl, they're having sex. It's just like, this is like a public environment. So the police shut down the Slide. It was the long and short of it.
So I guess they didn't realize there were still such things as back alleys and parks and bathhouses. They thought that was the only place gay men could go out and have sex.
They also didn't realize that gay men by that point, this is kind of a hard line I took. if you didn't know about condoms, you were really, really, really head in the sand. If you didn't know about ways to avoid serial converting, then you really were not very, savvy. I felt like everyone had the information. What they did with that information was their own individual choice. And no matter what you did, it's a little bit like masks or vaccinations. It's kind of like at some point, everyone's informed. Their decisions are their decisions, and then they have to live by those decisions. So I don't have a lot of sympathy now when people that are anti-vaxxers get sick with COVID. And I had more sympathy for gay men that serial converted, because a lot of times they did it when they were drunk or high. So that was a little bit more of a different thing, where I don't think people are getting COVID as much because they're drunk and high. I think they're doing it because they're Republicans. Anyway, enough about that. So anyway, that was a tough time for me.
So after Slide closed, what did you do next?
Well, I licked my wounds for a while because I was, like I said, kind of a pariah. And then when the Slide got shut down because the Vice Squad came in because people were having live sex, a lot of bars wouldn't work with me. And so I kind of went underground. And it was also a really tough time because, like, Mr. Black was trying to start. It was a big club in New York. And the owner of this guy, I can't remember his name now. No one remembers his name, but Simon or something. He called me in and pumped me for information on who to book and what to do. But then he wouldn't work with me really because I had this reputation for the Slide. Now, the irony, of course, is that Mr. Black got shut down permanently for drugs, which is way more worse than sex in terms of the Vice Squad. But it was tough because people were trying to get my information and work with the people I was working with, but they wouldn't work with me. So I kind of had to go underground. So I started doing loft parties in the meatpacking district, that triangle building at 9th and 14th. I did the top floor there for about a year, and then a loft down in Chinatown, and I would just find the wackiest spaces. The basement of a Chinese restaurant on Avenue B, and I just found all these underground spaces to do parties, and so I kept going like a true sort of smut peddler.
Well, and that seemed to be quite a trend there. I know I've spoken to several people in the course of this series who also have talked about places like that. Frankie Sharp was one that I've interviewed who had some fond memories of the kind of grungy, gritty underground scene in New York around that time. Linda Simpson a little bit with her experiences at the Tunnel, Johnny McGovern, who did a number of parties there. So you were in good company there. I mean, there's a lot of people from the scene that had the same kind of mindset about doing something that wasn't, a big commercial, lipstick and sequin production. They were trying to do something that was more down to earth and gritty. How did you come to be connected with Club Cumming?
Well, Alan, okay, this is a funny story. Alan and I have been friends for many, many years, 10 to 15 years. We knew each other. We'd gone on a few dates. I really love him. He's a sweetheart of a guy. One night I was doing a radio show in the East Village called Dlist Radio, because I had this social network I started called Dlist.com, which is short for Daniel's List, and it was very popular. So I started doing this radio show, which was an early sort of iteration of the modern day podcast. So I was doing this podcast with Bianca Del Rio, because Katrina had just happened. So that must have been 2006. She was up in New York, and I found her because I have an apartment in New Orleans. I'm a big fan of Bianca. I love her. So I found her in New York, and I asked her to do this radio show with me. So every Saturday night, dutifully, she'd come to the East Village. We'd do this radio show from 8 to 10. Then we'd march over with all the people that were doing the radio show with us, and we would go to Eastern Bloc and throw a party every week. And I would book these ridiculous acts, and it was fun to blow Bianca's mind because she's from New Orleans. And despite what you think, New Orleans is pretty tame. So I would book these drag queens sitting on bottles and these outrageous acts, and Bianca would be speechless, which, if you know Bianca Del Rio, that's saying a lot if you get her speak. So one night, Alan Cumming came to the party, and he had never met Bianca, and my boyfriend at the time was doing the door, and he ran in and said, "Alan Cumming's in the line. Should I comp him?" And I said, "No, he's rich. Why would it's $5? like, why do rich people get shit for free? You know what I mean? I'd rather give the poor kid who lives in Bushwick, free than. And I love Alan. He wasn't expecting it, trust me. But like, this guy was English that I was dating from Manchester, so he was a bit gobsmacked that Alan Cumming was there. Alan, of course, being Alan, paid and didn't even bat his eyelash at it. Came in and he comes up to me and I said, you know what? I'm about to announce the show, but I got to go backstage. Do you mind holding the light? Like, we had. There were no lights at Eastern Bloc. You had to hold the light for Bianca, like the spotlight. And it was just like a light he held up and, aimed at her. And he was like, sure, being Alan. He didn't care. He thought it was fun. And he held the light. I go backstage. Bianca start the show. Bianca comes out and she looks up and she's like, holy shit, Alan Cumming's doing my lights. And that was the beginning of our like friendship. We all three are friends. And so Alan and I became friends. We started doing stuff together. I did his like, opening night, his debut at Carnegie Hall. I produced it. We've done a bunch of firsts together, and so he started doing Club Cumming when he was doing 54s when he was doing Cabaret in his dressing room. He made like a club out of his dressing room so that he didn't have to go afterward. He'd save time. People would come up and drink there for free, and it was really fun. Any night you'd go up, and it would be Dick Cavett, and then it would be Naomi Watts, and then it would be like not even just celebrities, but fun celebrities like Graham Norton. All of a sudden be sitting there and in would walk, Dick Cavett. I'm a huge fan of Dick Cavett. I think he's so cool. And when it ended, the run at Cabaret, I said to Alan, why don't we open like a brick and mortar? And it was the week Trump got voted president, and the owners of Eastern Bloc, one of them put his keys, a picture of his hand holding his keys from Eastern Bloc, and said, anyone want to buy a bar, as if he was going to move out the country. And I went to him and said, I want to buy a bar. I'll take your bar. And that's kind of how it all happened. I went to Alan. I said, I found the bar. We did all the requisite paperwork and all that jazz. And we opened Club Cumming. And that was sort of a whole new thing for me, because I had never really had my own space before that. So that was the first time I got like my real playground to try stuff out. So it was really cool.
Yeah, Club Cumming was also a very tiny space, correct?
Tiny, too tiny. Which ultimately is why I left, because, Alan didn't need the money. Obviously, Club Cumming wasn't a source of income for him. It was more, he loved it. And I mean, he's very focused on the finances and he's good with business and stuff. But I really needed I have some Fire Island's my big money-making season, but then when that ends, I'm just like, the winter, I do here and there little things, but I wanted to I need to develop So I did Club Cumming for a couple of years, and then I realized okay, I need to do a bigger space. I'm working with all these big names, and they can't come to Club Cumming because it's not enough money for them. And so I did it for about 2 or 3 years, and then during COVID, I thought this is a really good opportunity with commercial rents being so low to lock in a new space. And so I sold my stake in Club Cumming and opened up. Well, we're in the process of opening up the new space.
Very cool.
Yeah.
You kind of breezed over there a little bit with, starting your underwear party at Slide, and but you're really well known for your Fire Island underwear parties. So why don't we talk about how that evolved and what all went into that?
So my dear friend Sweetie, dearly parted Sweetie, if you could see on my walls, there's tons of Sweetie pictures. There's her performing, and there's her and me, and so there's a lot of Sweetie in my life. She was my best friend. She was a drag queen, and probably, in my estimation, one of the best. And she had got invited to perform out on Fire Island, and she called me and said, "Do you want to do something on Fire Island?" And I said, "Sure, I'd love to." I also was really aware. I'm really good at noticing what the trends sort of are in certain things. I started noticing that in summer, everyone was going out to the island, and the promoters here in the city were banging their heads against the wall trying to get people to come to their parties. And I thought, why don't you just go to Fire Island? So when she gave me that opportunity, I jumped at it, and I went out and did the underwear party there, and it was a scandal. I never would have thought it would have been such a scandal, but it was. When I did it, I decided the theme was Boy Scout camp. I just thought it was a cute theme. You could, use the whole, joke around about pitch your tent. You could it's camp, you're on Fire Island. There was just a lot of fun things there. What I didn't realize is that Cherry Grove, where I opted to do it, I didn't want to do it in the Pines because the Pines seemed a little too stuffy. Cherry Grove, it was really shell-shocked from post-AIDS. A lot of people died out there. It was like very much where a lot of people were wounded from losing friends, and and then tens of friends, some people. And so let's just say I wasn't welcome. People were really upset, like all the old timers who, since passed, were really upset. They really didn't like me being there, really didn't like the underwear party. So what ended up happening was the older generation felt like, because they called it Boy Scout camp, that it was only for younger people. And the lesbians thought, because it was called Boy Scout camp, that it was only for men. So they all decided that I was like the worst person since Hitler. And so they really hated me. But I persevered, which is like something I've always done, is I've got stick-to-itiveness, which is one of my better qualities. And I just stuck with it. And I proved them all wrong, because old people would show up and we'd welcome them. The only rule was you got to get in your underwear. And sometimes the old timers would come and be like, I've lived here for 20. I said, I don't care, Queen. I don't care if you've lived here for 100 years. It's an underwear party. If I have to be in my underwear, you have to be in your underwear. Sometimes the young guys from the Pines would come over and they'd be like, I'm not paying $5 to get in. This is the Grove. And I'd be like, then march your ass back to the Pines. I don't give a fuck. Like, you're not, this is what this is. And I have people to pay. And I was very that way. And people started to come in droves. But what really tipped the scales was Richard LaFrance, who, has since passed. He decided that I was like the worst thing to ever happen to Fire Island. And so he decided to meet every boat and hand them flyers telling them not to come to my party, because he said it was ageist and anti-women, misogynistic. That was a game changer, because the minute he did that, people wanted to come and see what it was all about. And it tipped the scales, and suddenly the party became a hit. By that point, it was ambling along, for about 4 weeks. At one point, we thought, well, are we going to keep doing it or not? But we kind of knew we were onto something, but that tipped the scales. And Richard at the time hated me. Since after that, we became friends until he passed. But he hated me because he just had this, a lot of people judge things without really going. So he had this idea that it was going to be like young, hot guys and old people weren't welcome, and and women weren't welcome. Meanwhile, it was just for anyone. Let your freak flag fly. Well, I thanked him publicly for teaching me a valuable lesson, and I decided to hire actors in the city to protest my parties. And it became such a gimmick that people would laugh when they'd show up, and I would have guys dressed as priests outside of a sex party screaming at people with a Bible. And it was hilarious. But I'll never forget one time at the Slide, these guys came downstairs and 2 priests were outside, these actors, and the actors got really into it, these overzealous actors, and they were just shouting like fire and brimstone as guys were going down the stairs. And these guys didn't realize that it was just me with one of my gimmicks, because I love gimmicks. I think they're hilarious. These guys came down and they had like been, recovering Christians, and they were so like plucked and worked over and upset by having these guys yell fire, you are going to die, damnation, and all this stuff. It was so funny. These guys, and I had to tell them, they're actors, like, you're not going to hell. It was very funny. So anyway, Fire Island kind of taught me, Fire Island exclusively taught me how to be a better promoter, because I did the party, it started to grow, it started to become something, and then the Pines got upset. Fridays had never been a night where people went out. People just traditionally came in. Friday nights had dinner with their people, friends in their house. Saturday night was the big night at the pavilion. I made Friday into something, and it's very typical of this in the gay world, I'm sure in the straight world as well. You create something out of nothing, and then people decide they become obsessed with trying to take it from you, because their attitude in the Pines, and still to this day, is the only way for me to succeed is if you fail. Whereas I looked at the whole island and thought, okay, Friday nights are open. I'm not going to take from anyone. I'm just going to bring something to the table. But they're like, we have to take from Daniel. So they become obsessed with doing underwear parties up against me. Obsessed. Like every year they put on these pathetic little parties that no one would go to, and people would laugh at, and they'd send people out to like try to get people to not wait in line for the water taxis and try to offer them free drinks. And then they would really underhanded like lie and say the party was canceled, or send in people from their bartenders to pull the fire alarms. I mean, it just got so ridiculous. But the party just kept growing and growing and growing, because I learned many years ago from a much wiser friend to not fight with them about it, to just, stay steady on the course, always focus on the customer service angle of it. And occasionally, when they're really down, keep kicking harder. So when the party would fail, I would make fun of them and belittle them. I always used to say online, imitation is not the sincerest form of flattery. It's the sincerest form of laziness. And that when people in nightlife are copying other people, they need to be called out for it, because we as gay people, if we don't have creativity, what do we have? I mean, as far as I'm concerned, being creative is one of the greatest gifts of being gay. We don't have to get married, but we can, which is fantastic. We don't have to live conventional lives, but we can. We don't have to have children, but we can in some places. And straight people don't have that. I'm sorry, I'm going off on a tangent, but like most straight people aren't aware that they don't have to have children, or that they don't have to get married, because they have this pressure from their parents or society. Why isn't she married yet? She's 28, or, oh my God, is she ever gonna have children? And we just have this like amazing creativity to us. So when a fellow gay promoter, some of whom you mentioned earlier when you said you talked to them, rip off me or other people, I usually call them out on it. And so the Pints was really bad about that. And they still are. Last year was probably the most pathetic year of all, because they literally would take my flyers and try to copy them. You know what I mean? So it was a really embarrassing year for them. But I just shake my head because I feel so bad for them, because they still haven't learned like to find your voice, what you are, and hone that and create a career around it. Not Daniel's making money, so we're going to try to take from Daniel. So that was the biggest thing the Pints taught me. Sorry, that was really long-winded.
Well, what other way are we going to capture these stories than to hear them directly from, the people that were involved? And if it takes a little bit longer, that's the way it is. But so when did you start doing these parties in Cherry Grove? What time?
This is bad. Walking down to 89, I moved to New York in 95. It was probably 98 or 99. I was like 31. I'm 55 now. I mean, I'm bad with this. I've never really done it, and I'm working on a book.
So it's been over 20 years.
It's been over 20 years. Yeah. Yeah.
And out of those 20 years, is there a memory that sticks out in your head as something that was really wild or outrageous or crazy that happened at one of these parties that you want to tell anybody who asks about the underwear party about something that happened, I don't know, 5, 10, 15 years ago that's just stuck in your memory?
I remember one night being at the Slide, and it was like a poppin' night. Guys were there. People were sucking dick everywhere. It was really intense. And the door guy calls me over because Tilda Swinton was there. She was coming in. And if you were at the Slide, you looked up the door, and then the stairs were coming down. And Tilda Swinton was coming down the stairs in I'm pretty sure it was John Galliano gown, white gown. And she came down the stairs, and I was like, "Hi, I'm Daniel." And she's like, I can't do her accent, but I'm gonna try. I just had twins, and then I'm not getting in my underwear. And I was like, you're fucking Tilda Swinton. You can wear whatever you want. So I let her in. She came into the underwear party and hung out with people. And I'm not even joking. People were like having sex next to her. This pre-cell phone. No one took pictures. I did get pictures, actually. I have a couple pictures. But she, there was no cell phone pictures. So she was free to do whatever she wanted. It was a really great night. That was really crazy because, we had we'd get Boy George stopping by, or Anderson, Cooper, or different people. But it isn't always about the celebrities. The Tilda Swinton thing just blew me away because she was wearing a white gown, and that just was a real mind boggler. She had a good time. And that was probably the most iconic night for me, I would say. I mean, the other ones are really wild sexual nights, but that was kind of the craziest experience.
Now, the parties on Cherry Grove. Where do you usually hold those?
At the Ice Palace. I started at the Tides, which is now what used to be the Monster. That's where I started, and then I moved it to the Ice Palace,
which is one of the most iconic clubs anywhere in the New York City area. I mean,
yeah, I wish they knew that. It's interesting to me because I don't think they seem to know. I love, Rob, who manages it, and I've been there for years, but like you go into the office and they'll have like pictures of palm trees and beaches, and I'll be like, Sarah Vaughan performed here, and I brought Lady Gaga for my birthday party, like Liza Minnelli I brought here, Cheetah Rivera, Carol Channing. Why aren't you putting those pictures up of actually here? We don't even have palm trees. So I kind of bring it up to them every year, like, you could put up pictures of like, this place is iconic. And then I went to the Museum of Sex, and they had an exhibition about New York clubs, and it's whole thing on the Ice Palace. And I learned so much, and I sent it over to them, and I said, you should be out front, put this plaque up that tells all this information that they did the research on. But they never got around to it. It's mind-boggling because it has so much history. My friend Michael Fesco did a lot of stuff there, named it the Ice Palace. And he told me all these great stories that no one really, seems to know there. It's bizarre.
Yeah.
But that's why I love what you're doing, because people don't really care about their history a lot of times. It's a little like what I love about RuPaul's Drag Race is that she really talks a lot about history. I don't know if you watch it, but there was an episode a couple seasons ago where she did a whole thing on disco. And we're talking clued in, really media savvy kids didn't even know about the disco sucks movement.
Right.
And I was boggled, So it's interesting. But I honestly think even kids watching that show probably didn't even Google it after that. We're at that time now where people don't really care as much. And I don't know your age. I can only intuit from your voice that you're somewhat in an age range near mine. I don't think you're early 20s at least, but I don't know. But I really read a lot. Andrew Holleran, I read a lot of books sort of, Randy Schultz, the band played on. I read a lot of books. I wanted to know about my history when I was younger. That isn't, and I'm not saying kids are bad nowadays. I think that it's just information so easy to come by that they don't really, and they don't need to learn about the women or, all the gay sort of things that we sort of, or at least I sort of felt was part of my education. So being long-winded, I guess the Ice Palace doesn't see it necessary to tell people that it's this incredibly historic venue.
Yeah, I think that's a little unfortunate. I kind of started this project because I was having conversations with people about one particular bar in Atlanta that I had some very fond memories of. It was Backstreet. And that led to a whole series of conversations about other bars in Atlanta at the same time frame. And once COVID hit, I had plenty of time to do extra research because, you're not going out clubbing and you're not going out to dinner and you're not socializing as much. And so it kind of mushroomed into this gigantic project. But you mentioned RuPaul. And when I was living in Atlanta, when I first moved there, RuPaul was getting his feet wet in the Atlanta club scene before he and Lahoma and Larry T moved to New York.
Yeah.
And a lot of people that see RuPaul, they think of RuPaul as this kind of, Hollywood supermodel, gorgeous, decked out drag queen. And I know RuPaul from being, a tall, skinny boy in little go-go shorts and a cut-off T-shirt, dancing on a 3-foot square plywood box in a little grungy nightclub. So
the old pictures are doing her no favors because they pop up and it's like, ooh, her makeup was rough or her look was rough. And that's what I love about Ru is that I think I'm a big Ru, like the show notwithstanding, I like the show fine, but Ru Paul goes through so much controversy. People attack her all the time. And I think she's a effeminate 6'7" black man from the South who has made herself into a multi-millionaire in a very white world, and gay, I should say, effeminate gay man against all odds. I mean, that's my hero. That's incredible to me. You know what I mean? And she's helped a lot of people become millionaires in nightlife, you know?
Right. And for all intents and purposes, RuPaul has become the international face of drag for everyone, gay, straight, conservative, liberal, whoever they are. RuPaul is, I would say, undeniably the most famous drag queen on the planet.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
And to see how that evolved from somebody that would have performed in a place like Slide or Club Cumming, and probably did. I know RuPaul performed in quite a number of small, dark, grungy underground clubs in New York when he first moved there. So,
but so did Bianca.
Right.
What Bianca was performing, like I said, at Eastern Bloc with me. And then she hosted the underwear party on Fire Island for a whole season. And she did it with a smile. She showed up on time. She always did her job. And you look at her now, she's selling out giant venues across the world, going on tour. I mean, constantly. Multi-millionaire. She's probably, if I had to hazard a guess, I'd say she's probably now amassed a really decent fortune. I was just at her house in Palm Springs about a month ago, and it was like, girlfriend's doing fine financially. It's a beautiful house.
Well, they deserve it. And, and that's part of this whole project about, remembering our past and learning about where we all came from, because a lot of the things that we're seeing now have evolved because of things like what you did 20 years ago. I mean, most people today, and you mentioned, the younger people, the ones that are in maybe their 20s or early 30s, they don't realize this, but the underground scene in the gay culture is largely responsible for the visibility of a lot of these trans activists and, people, even the club kids. Their self-expression is what opened the doors for people to have their self-expression today, because those people did not identify. They didn't try to say I'm a guy or I'm a girl or whatever. They wore what they wanted. They put the makeup on they wanted. They could be as ridiculous or as proper as they wanted, and it was acceptable in their group.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100% on that. I think I've sort of always firmly believed that because of AIDS, we kind of lost a lot of tastemakers and a lot of the creatives. Let's face it, the creative people are probably out there having sex more, and they're probably out there living their lives more, creative people, and they probably were dying in bigger numbers than non-creative people. I mean, I know that's a bit of a stretch, but they were out there probably doing a little more wild things, and so AIDS took away a lot of them. And I feel like that's somehow the reason that we as a culture, gay men, have gone from being a creative class to being a consumer class, because a lot of artists are people that appreciated art, a lot of people that went to the opera, a lot of people that knew this history died. And so all of a sudden we went from creating music, creating fashion, creating, all these things. Now we've gone to consuming those things, and other people are creating them. Straight people, a lot. I just find it's very fascinating. We lost AIDS. You're never able to really, I think we'll never really be able to grasp how much that fucked the gay community. Not just in all these people dying, but also too that they were the people that had interesting dinner parties. Fran Lebowitz talks about it. They were the people that were the thinkers, and a lot of them we lost. And so I didn't really have mentors. Michael Fesco, the guy who named the Ice Palace, being one. Johnny Dynell is a little bit of a mentor. I don't really have mentors. So I had to find my own way. And I did okay. But God, it would have been a lot easier if I had someone, teaching me the way and helping me, and so, yeah, that's my little AIDS speech thing.
So aside from your DWORLD underwear parties on Fire Island, you kind of took a break from the club scene for a number of years. But I understand that now you have decided post-COVID that this is a good time to delve back into the club scene. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that project and what you've got going on there?
Well, I have a crew now, and I have people that have worked with me for years that really like my vision and also bring their vision to it. And so it's like I'm 55, and while I don't feel like I'm certainly too old to go out, I do feel like there are other things in life I want to do. Travel, get up early in the morning, different things I'd like to do. So I don't want to be at bars every night of the week anymore. It's just it doesn't serve my life. So when I had Club Cumming, I realized okay, I'm there a lot, and it was just getting to be a little bit much. And I thought, I want to open this new venue. I had started doing a lot of live stream shows, and they were pretty successful. We did a birthday thing for Liza Minnelli and one with Uta Lemper and Sharon Needles with Drag Race. And they really did well. So Sam, who's been my right-hand man for years and now my business partner, and Taylor, who's Taylor Schubert, who's a sweetheart who worked for me and now is my business partner. I went to them and said, you guys both work in nightlife, but now's your chance to own. I'm going to give you the opportunity to own. I said, so what? Basically, I'm going to find a venue and I'm going to foot the bill, and we're going to find this venue. We're going to turn it into something that's never been done before, in the sense that it's a coffee bar by day, because I really love community. And you're probably, if you're from New York, the Big Cup, which was it was very informative. It sort of influenced me a lot when I first moved to New York, because it was social and cruisy, and it was like a hub, and you could talk with people and you could meet people for dates. It was an alcohol based completely. And so we're opening RedEye NY on 41st and 9th, and it's from 7 a.m. till 4 p.m. It's a coffee bar. You can have alcohol, but coffee, drinks, and people working on scripts, Broadway actors, creatives. 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock, we're doing live podcasts, because I did that show with Bianca Del Rio. They called me the Podfather because I started doing podcasts so many years ago. So, I've got a bunch of podcasts planned we're going to do in the afternoon. Then it segues into the cabaret stuff, which I've been doing for years. So you got Cheetah Rivera, from 8 until 10. And then at night, on weekends, night stuff, dance club stuff. And I just got back from Mexico City yesterday, and I, got really influenced by people there. And I've been traveling a lot to go to different places. Berlin, I lived there, so I kind of went back and checked it out. And I'm bringing all of it together in one space, and it's going to be my creative magnum opus, I hope, or it'll flop.
So what can we expect from the decor in there? What are we going to be looking at when we walk into the space?
Well, it's 4 or 5 times the size of Club Cumming, so it's not going to be Club Cumming. We're not going with the red and black. That was sort of what I did before. I'm going more warm, orangey glow. It's RedEye NY, so it's evoking sort of, it's a little Euro, because of my experiences in Europe. It's sleek upstairs. The back room is going to, is like the back room being the cabaret space. It's going to be tricked out, so at the flip of a switch, we can go live on the web. So we're doing, this, and it'll be chicer and sleeker than anything I've ever done before, because we're building it out. The entire place was gutted. There weren't even floors 6 months ago. So it's literally all new. Then downstairs is more of a Berlin bunker, post-apocalyptic, raw, you know what I mean? Really sexy. I'm going to do more sexy stuff down there. I did this naked party called Devil Wears Nada, and we're doing that down there. And, the underwear party we'll do down there. And it's going to be more raw, more CBGBs, punk club, things like that. Upstairs is more sleek and sexy. So 2 different vibes.
Now, a lot of clubs, I've talked to several people who are opening new clubs around this time frame, or have recently, within the last year, opened a new club. And one of the trends that I'm seeing in a lot of them is that they are, as opposed to the older clubs, like I'm sure Slide was 99.9% male oriented, very male centric type facility. Is RedEye going to be more open to a greater spectrum of the LGBT community, or is it still focused mostly on men?
Well, I mean, trans women are, I mean, many of my friends are trans women, so they're always invited to everything and they're always included in everything, including the underwear party on Fire Island. We get a lot of lesbians, a lot of trans women. I don't care what you have between your legs. I don't care what you have between your ears, as long as you're nice. And as long as you bring something and you don't take something. So the only group that I kind of have a firm stance are bachelorette parties. And I'm not saying we wouldn't allow bachelorette parties, but we would strictly school them in how to behave, because I've seen them act like animals. And I refuse to feel like we're being gawked at. And I refuse to have straight women come into a gay environment and say things like, you're gay, what a waste. We wouldn't do that to straight men. Gay men wouldn't go into a straight bar and say to a straight man, what a waste. Like, probably get punched in the face. But like, I think if you come into our house, and by our, I mean the queer house, you got to act correct. You got to act like you're, you know, we used to get people at the underwear party on Fire Island, and we still do actually, who'd walk up to the door, straight women, and they'd be like, well, I'm not getting in my underwear. And I'd be like, you understand, I don't give a fuck if you're here. Like, you're not coming in here and prancing about like you're privileged because you're a woman in a gay bar. Like, you come correct and say like, I'm going to this thing and this is what this party is and I'm going to add to it, or I go to charities, you know what I mean? And so I have a really strict sort of thing about that. And the guys that work for me know that. If you don't, you bring, my brother always says, you know, there are two types of people in the world, those that come to a dinner party with a bottle of wine and those that come with a doggy bag. And I just really firmly, don't come with a doggy bag. Bring something, you know what I mean? Add to the party. So anyway, that's sort of my take on that.
It is so refreshing to hear that, because I have heard so many people tell me, particularly since I've spent the last 2 years talking to everybody and their brother about gay bars. I tend to hear more of the stories, but I've heard so many people blame the demise of the gay scene on bachelorette parties. And the fact that they basically turn a gay bar into a sorority house for however many hours they're there, and kind of ruin the whole vibe and the energy. And, you know, it just,
it's awful.
They just cringe. So it's nice to know that, you know, while you're going to welcome whoever comes into the door, that you're requiring them to respect the environment, to respect the clientele, to respect the vibe of the club. And, you know, I think these days that's all we can really ask, is that we should all get along and we should all have a good time. But, you know, if you don't want to be in a leather bar, don't go into a leather bar. If you don't want to be in a queer bar, don't go into a queer bar.
Straight people because they live such a life of privilege they're not even aware of, they have sort of a lot of times this attitude that they need to change the environment to suit them.
Right.
So, you know, like I said, I have an apartment in New Orleans, and then suddenly all these Northerners moved down there after Katrina, you know, it became Brooklyn South, and started complaining about the music on the streets. The bands were too loud. They wanted to change. And that happened in New York. You know, people would move next to the Pyramid Club and be like, it's too loud, you know, straight people. And I'm not just saying straight people, because God knows as gays, we've got a lot of bitches, but like, straight people have this thing like, I move in, you got to change to mine. And I have no problem sending people out. I have no problem kicking people out. It's like, I think it's been like with the underwear party, it really taught me that if you stick to your guns, like I said, you know, 20 odd years ago with the underwear party, when people come up, I've lived here for 20 years. I don't give a fuck. I'd say my mother could walk up right now and I'd be like, Ma, you got to get an underwear to go in there. So it's like, not like you're not special. You either do it or you don't. And that attitude served me, because I realized that people was like, okay, he's created. The worst thing people do is they try to copy me and they do an underwear party, but they're too afraid to stick to it. So they go, I'm doing an underwear party, but you know, it's, you know, your drinks are half price if you're, no, you either do it or you don't, honey. Like if you do it, people will come. If you don't, everyone's going to go just to be looky-loos. And so I'm very strict about that. And you know, we're not going to say no bachelorette parties, but I mean, 2 weeks ago I was in Palm Springs and I saw, what club was that? I forget the name, Hunters. And it was just ruined by these shrieking women. And I just said, oh no. I mean, it was just so, I understand gay bars are, this is going to be very controversial, what I'm about to say. So gay bars are always whining about how Grindr killed gay bars. Grindr did not kill gay bars. Gay bars kill gay bars because they're lame by and large, because they think bitchy bingo is a concept. They think that like Twisted Tuesdays is an idea. They think that Thirsty Thursdays is a party. They think that there's, if you look at, you go to any city and you look at what gay bar parties they have, they're always the same. They mopped it from someone else. They've stolen the idea. There's no creativity. There's no edginess. Everyone's afraid to be edgy. If I do something at Club Cumming, I'd come up with an idea. Within 3 weeks, they'd be doing it at clubs here in Chelsea or Hell's Kitchen. They would just copy the idea because gay bars are not creative now, which goes back to my point of the creative class. And the bars are whining. And I say, I don't know, Club Cumming was a success, and RedEye will, God be willing, be a success. But gay bar owners, oftentimes, they forget that for every Ian Schrager, you need a Steve Rubell. And everyone's like, well, I'm Ian Schrager. Well, I don't care. Like, great, you can count money, but you need a Steve Rubell. And so I'm Steve Rubell, and unfortunately not very good at being Ian Schrager. So I have to find my Ian Schragers, which is Sam, my assistant, or now my business partner.
So what part of town is RedEye going to be in?
41st and 9th. So it's in Hell's Kitchen. It's in the back of Port Authority.
That seems to be a trending area for new gay enterprises.
I love it because it's a seedy block. And so when you go over there, people are like, are we in the right neighborhood? Because you're around you run 42nd Street. So I love it.
Now, I remember getting back to your kind of comment earlier about my age. I'm about 8 years older than you. And so I remember, and I grew up in New Jersey, right outside of New York City. So I was there frequently. And when I was in high school, going to Hell's Kitchen, you wanted an armed guard in the daytime. I mean, it wasn't somewhere you went by yourself or with a friend and just walked down the street. You had a destination in mind and probably got dropped off near the door because you weren't going to wander around. But now it seems like that area, that whole kind of Hell's Kitchen area is very much gentrifying and having, some new energy pumped into it. And there seems to be a number of gay clubs that are opening over there. That seems to be where the hotspot of Manhattan is right now for the gay community. So I would think you would be in good company there.
I like the idea of people not, like, the problem I had with Club Cumming was the fact that it was a destination. So, people didn't do a pub crawl. You were so far from Phoenix. But here, you can go from here, you can go over to Q, you can go to industry, you can go to therapy, you can go to whatever. It's a little bit more of like people can bop about. I like that. I think it makes a night interesting when people leave and new people show up. And I feel like we're going to, because we're kind of like a seedy street, I feel like we're going to be where people end up late night. I'll be asleep, but
hence the name RedEye.
Exactly. And the fact that we're doing a lot of coffee inspired, coffee infused drinks. We're doing, espresso martinis and Negronis. And so you can come out and stay up a little bit later by having Red Bull is so toxic that we're like, we're going to try to find other substances besides Red Bull for people.
Right. But it's a great concept. And I like the fact that it's going to have, more of a daytime element as well, because that is one thing that as a community we're missing somewhat, is having those kind of places where, everybody wants to go to Starbucks or something. I'm like, why? There need to be some good spaces where you can go and have coffee and be with, some gay friends, or just be yourself, dress the way you want to dress, and be accepted walking in there, and know that it's a business that, supports LGBT rights and the LGBT community in general. So I really applaud you for, having that daytime element as well, and not trying to completely hang your hat on the concept of getting people drunk and tossing them back out in the street.
Years ago, I realized this. I have so many things I can't do. I can't change a tire. I can't fix a car, but there are certain things I'm good at. And the things I'm good at, I think, are sort of finding a hole and filling it, no pun intended. So I know, right? I always say that and I get a chuckle. But for instance, I noticed in nightlife and even in marketing and even in sponsorship money, these companies will give you money for like to sponsor your events if they think your audiences are going to be 21 to 30. And I mean, I like literally like Stoli or different companies like that. They're like, we want to know, like, we're going to give you money, but your demographic has to be in the 20s. I'm like, what about the 45-year-old guy? What about the 55-year-old guy? And that's when I segued years ago into doing Carnegie Hall. And I did Cheetah Rivera. There's the poster for Cheetah Rivera at Carnegie Hall. I did, that's me and Whoopi backstage. I did, Alan Cumming's debut at Carnegie Hall. I started doing more cabaret shows, like Fire Out in the Summer. I mean, yes, there's the Underwear Party, but I'm also doing an evening with John Waters, an evening with Mary Lou Henner, Ada Vox, who's an amazing singing drag queen from the American Idol, Cheetah Rivera, like all of these people I brought out because I was like, no, everyone's obsessed with 25-year-olds and they're insipid. And now they do so much G that they don't even drink that much anymore, but everyone thinks it has to be that. And yes, there is a time at 2 a.m. in the morning when you would like to have a gaggle of 23-year-old gay boys at your club because more people come because there are young hot guys there. But what about 8 o'clock? What about 4 in the afternoon? I used to do this thing at Club Cumming called Yappy Hour. And it was like people would come with their dogs and we had a big pen out front and you put your dog in the pen and they could all play and people could sit and have a drink. And it was really fun. It was, I mean, I'll probably do it at RedEye, but it was really fun for people because it was like an afternoon. A lot of people were older. You're not going to make $1 million. I don't care. You're serving the community. And it was really fun.
Absolutely. And that is another thing too, that addresses somewhat is one of the initial kind of feedback that I got on this project was people saying, well, why are you so focused on the bars? We have so many alcoholics and blah, blah. Well, first of all, nobody forces anyone to drink in a bar. I know personally, I'll go out to a bar and sometimes not have a drink at all. I'll have a soft drink or something else because my goal in life is no longer to go out and get trashed. 20, 30 years ago, it was a different story. 20 or 30 years ago, we went out every night of the week. We went out on work nights. We went out on weekend night. It didn't matter. You just went out because that was where your community was. So if you wanted to see other gay people and hang out with your friends, you were probably at a bar 5 or 6 nights a week. But now with the concerns about a lot of people as recovering alcoholics and all that, that's another good reason not to be so focused on alcohol and have them feel like they're welcome to come in and have a coffee or have some other drink, a mocktail of some sort, and still be part of the community and not be looked down upon. And people saying, well, this is a bar. Where is your no?
Well, we have a mixologist working with us who's creating a whole menu that's like, we're calling it free spirits, and it's basically people that just want a non-alcoholic drink. I mean, I didn't drink for 8 years, so when I would go into bars, it was like I would have to get like a soda with lemon, like could I get a club soda with lemon, because there would be never an option.
Right.
And so we are looking at a bunch of fun sort of things that we could do. That, like I said, a lot of these things don't really make money, but it's not really about the money. It's about serving the community, because the community is frankly why I've not had to work for anyone else in 25 years. I am so thankful because there are a bastion of gay men who've supported me in all my endeavors for so many years. I mean, admittedly, they got the rocks off many times and they had a blast and they came to Carnegie Hall, but I see a lot of the same guys now. Many of them are older, and I think to myself, I want to do something for them that they can come to. I don't want to just be like, okay, you're 40, I'm not doing anything for you anymore. So it's like cabaret shows or daytime things. They can still come and have a good time.
Absolutely. And I remember fondly, I lived in Austin, Texas for a couple of years. And there was a guy there by the name of Bobby Cook who opened a little bar right next door to the big disco club in Austin, which is called Oil Can Harry's.
Yeah.
Right next door to Oil Can Harry's. he opened up a little bar that was called Boys Cellar, Cellar. And Boys Cellar was kind of an alternative club. It wasn't nearly as big as Oil Cans. But one thing that strikes me from that, the memory of that bar, is that the back wall of the bar, they had a juice bar. And they had like 10 or 15 different kinds of juices there, you know, Snapples and orange juice and pineapple juice and energy drinks and all kinds of stuff like that. And it was, you know, big sign over it, juice bar. Everybody knew it was there. Nobody looked down at you if you went there to order a drink. And it didn't tie up the bartenders who were trying to make, you know, all these margaritas and cocktails, because it was a, you know, kind of an express lane.
Right.
And that was something that I've always wondered ever since then, why you don't see that in a gay bar. You know, why you don't have an option that, you know, a bar that actually embraces the concept of not consuming alcohol.
Well, that's kind of exactly what I told the boys. You know, when I came up with the idea for RedEye, I sat down with my team and I just basically said, I'm going in a different direction. I want to be, I was, you know, during COVID, I started going to bed at 8 o'clock at night because why stay up? You know, it was awful. I would go downstairs to bed and I would, like, I'd put something on, but I'd fall asleep by like 9:30. Sometimes I'd wake up at 4 or 5 in the morning, take my dog out. And the guys that worked for me would wake up and be like, Jesus, girl, I woke up at 5 a.m. to like emails from you. Well, and I said, I changed a lot during COVID. I realized I'm getting older. I'm realizing that like I was happy to not have to go out to Bushwick to hear some guy DJ that I was wanting to go out with. I was happy to not have to go see my friend in a bad play. You know, I was really kind of loving like a quieter existence, but I missed connection. And since nightlife sort of started back up again, I don't miss the bars as much. I was out in Mexico City 2 nights ago, dancing my ass off at this little club called Sick. That was really great. But I don't miss the bars as much, but I do miss the connection. And so I said to the boys, I think when we reopen, I want to focus on community and connection. The live podcast creates community, you know, and sure, you can get a drink. You can get a drink starting at 10 a.m. at our place. But I mean, we're really focusing on, you know, that big, you know, the big cup. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but that big cup vibe, which is maybe you meet your partner there. Maybe you go on a blind date there. Maybe you break up with your partner there, you know, but, you know, there's just, or you just meet a bunch of friends and bitch about RuPaul's Drag Race. You know what I mean? Like it's that's where I'm going more now in my direction. And, you know, I love jazz. I've been bringing jazz into all my clubs. Club Cumming, I was going to be bringing a lot of jazz, Richard Cortez, the Hot Sardines, you know, the Flying Neutrinos. And this is one of the things I'm bringing here. I want like jazzy nights where people can dance, older people, younger people, you know what I mean? Like live music, not just like Britney Spears and thumping bar tracks, you know. Maybe it'll fail, but, you know, one of the only things, the best things I can say, one of my best qualities is that I'm not afraid to fail.
Well, that's a good thing. And it sounds like you've had a great career doing all these kind of cool things in the entertainment scene. Always on the edge a little bit, always trying to be thinking outside the box, which I think is a great thing. And I really appreciate you taking the time to tell us about your experiences with these bars and to give us a little bit of insight into RedEye NY, which we're all looking forward to. When should we hope that will open?
Memorial Day. If the COVID gods allow, Memorial Day. It's just been hard. We've been postponed so much because of materials, soundproofing materials, and, you know, things are, you know, hard to get these days.
Well, we wish you all the luck, and I thank you for taking your time to talk to us about your bar experiences in New York City.
Thank you, man. Thanks so much.
That concludes another episode of the Gay Barchive Show. For more information about this episode or to find more episodes, visit gaybarchives.com.